All right, where we find ourselves in this storm. Obviously, you guys must have pissed somebody off because between COVID and losing your ACT dates in your junior year and now COVID in the fall and all the just craziness, all this is going on, right? But let's debrief this a little bit. A natural disaster is one of those examples of things that are really, there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in them, right? Because there's the stress of tracking the storm, there's the stress of is it going to hit us, and then the preparations, and then there's the uncertainty of do we have school, parents are thinking do we have work, right? And some of your parents might be business owners and they might have been affected by COVID shutdowns already, and the bottom line is taking a huge hit. And so this is a really stressful experience for a lot of people. For some of you, it may not have been a stressful experience. It might have been a nice, calming, relaxing week off of school. And that's great if that was your experience. So this message is probably not for you as much as it is for everybody else. And I'm happy. That's good. But we found ourselves with a very short turnaround time for a very strong storm. And the biggest issue with this storm was the water, obviously. We had rain. In some places, I live in Tiger Point, we got almost 33 inches of rain. So it saturated the ground, it made the roots of trees weak, the water table rose, people's pools got destroyed, patios got destroyed, the storm surge in the bay and the sound came into destroyed flood damage on first floors. There were only a couple of deaths, which every death is one too many, don't get me wrong. But the biggest concern about this storm was the loss of property and damage to property. So there's a couple things that I want to say. I know that for a lot of people this may have been a very stressful experience. It might have even been a fearful experience. If you have no memories of a major hurricane, like say Ivan, which was 16 years ago, this might have been the first time that you've kind of rode out a major hurricane in your house. You may have evacuated, or we had a scare with Michael and some of these other storms that we thought were going to hit, but that didn't hit. So that might have been a eye-opening experience for you. And here's the thing that I want to say. There's a few things that I want to say, but first, I'm happy that you're here. I know that people that are going to watch this on the film, they're not here, and obviously they're dealing with things at home, and that's what we want them to focus on. We want them to focus on getting everything fixed and get some normalcy and stuff like that. I'm happy that you're here though, because even though your parents might be dealing with storm damage and you might be dealing with insurance claims adjusters, or worse yet, maybe your parents are insurance claims adjusters, or whatever the case may be, it's a stressful time. You lose a few shingles, or a whole section of your roof gets ripped off, or something's leaking. There's a lot of things that can destroy your normalcy. And people take normalcy for granted. We left that Friday waving at everybody, have a good weekend, and then a hurricane hit that we didn't know was going to hit us. And it was crazy. In a matter of 24 hours, a lot of things changed. Some people's houses got flooded and destroyed. Some people are displaced, living in campers. You were probably without power for a while, trying to just have a generator or whatever the case may have been just to keep your refrigerator from turning. And it's a stressful situation. So there's some takeaways from this, but the most important thing is anytime that you have a major life change or a natural disaster, or God forbid something even worse than that, there's the emotional healing process of that. Some of you have probably had some time to decompress, to think about it, to accept the reality of whatever happened. Maybe you got a lot of damage, maybe you didn't get very much damage. Maybe you're very, very pleasantly surprised that your house held up well and you were able to help other people. Whatever the case may be for you. I don't know. But regardless, it's okay to be an emotional mess. I got emotional in first period just talking about all this. I just kind of deflected all these emotions, and then it just all kind of came to a head just thinking about the experiences of people that I've seen and been around. So I don't know what your situation at home is. I don't know what your house looks like. I don't know but here's what I'll say. There's a couple things to take away from this, and there's a couple things that you can do to move forward. First, a couple of takeaways are this. You guys are at the stage of your life now where you're emotionally mature enough to comprehend that bad things happen. And bad things happen because of for no apparent reason. There's no result of what you did that made a hurricane hit this area, a tornado sweep through the house, or shut down your parents' business. And that might change a lot if your parents lose their jobs because of this and can't afford to pay for your college, or whatever the case may be. There may be some long-term effects from this. And you think about like little siblings that you have or little cousins, their world is even more rattled by things because they're used to, they take normalcy for granted. I mean, all of us do. This is one of those examples where our normalcy was kind of shaken. It was rattled. And we learned, okay, well, maybe we just take our normal day-to-day routines for granted. Things like driving to work today, which I wasn't real excited to do over the weekend because I've been in pajama pants with no mask on for a whole week, except for when I was wading through water. And you're probably in the same situation, but it's a sense of normalcy. It's something that we took for granted. You know, when I was a senior in high school, 9/11 hit in the fall of my senior year, and as you can probably imagine, because you guys learned about it in school, that drastically changed a lot of things. It closed down sports, it shut down school, there was uncertainty about whether or not we were going to go to war. My birthday is the 23rd this week, so it was just a few weeks after 9/11 that I turned 18. 18-year-old males have to register for the draft. That was a real stressful experience for me as a high school senior because I was dumb and I didn't understand that I wasn't being drafted. I was just signing up for the draft. But there are a lot of things that go with that. That was shaking the foundations of my normalcy. A lot of people's normalcy. But with time, things went back to normal. And my memories of my senior year do include 9/11, being in school on this campus. In fact, I have this vivid memory that a friend of mine I saw in the hallway after like second period came running up and said, somebody flew a plane into the World Trade Center. And I said, how do you not see the World Trade Center? Like, that was my response to them. It's huge. And then, well, that's how naive we were about terrorist attacks. And no, someone flew a plane on purpose. And that was the beginning of a crazy week and an even crazier month. And we were displaced, and practices were canceled, and games didn't happen. And of course, selfishly, we were upset because it threw off everything in our senior year, and it was weird, and it disrupted our normal. And that's the same thing that you guys are going through. And it's okay to feel that way. But when you look back on this experience, it's just going to be another experience. Because the reality is that everything that matters at the end of the day is still intact. The people that love you are still here. You have coaches and teachers and probably professors and friends and neighbors and family members. You have a support network. Your future is not in jeopardy. You're probably still going to get into a good school. Your house may be destroyed right now, and that's definitely something that's difficult to deal with. Financially, that might mean some changes. A lot of people were living in campers and trailers after Ivan hit. I was in college when Ivan hit. It was destruction. And yeah, we could say it could always be worse, and that's always true, but it doesn't change the fact that your experience is real and you're dealing with the emotions of it. So one of the takeaways is that you're still here, right? I mean, that seems trivial, but you are. What you're going to find as you get older, you go through natural disasters, or you lose family members, or you go through difficult things, and some of you have already gone through unimaginable loss, or even just emotional loss of rejection, or parents that split up when you were young and you split time between each house. That takes an emotional toll. I mean, think about why childhood and youth is so magical. The innocence of youth. The innocence of youth is so magical because of another I word, and what is it? They don't know the reality of the bad things of life. They are what to it? They are ignorant to the realities of life. Everything is magical. But as you start to gain knowledge, the world becomes less magical. Ignorance is bliss, right? So little children struggle with things because they don't have a sense that bad things can happen to them. They don't walk around in public thinking that strangers could hurt them. They don't think that storms will come and knock the trees down in their yard that they climb in. And that might be devastating to their world. You can't tell a little kid to have some perspective because they don't have the benefit of perspective. And you all do. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a time to emotionally heal and process what you just experienced. And that's true of every natural disaster or every devastating event that happens to you. You have to allow yourself time to emotionally process what happened. But then you gain some perspective and you get to move forward. Right? And this is a good time for me to make a shameless plug for the book I told you about at the beginning of the year. It's a book written by an Austrian Jewish psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl. His last name is spelled F-R-A-N-K-L, Frankl. He wrote one of the most famous psychology books ever written. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And as I've told you, the book is two parts. The first part is his experience in Nazi concentration camps, which is hard enough to read. But it's even more difficult because he's telling you how he's emotionally hanging on and staying alive. It's the hope that he'll get to see his wife again, and then he finds out that his wife is dead. So imagine the emotional devastation of everything that he was hanging on to emotionally stay sane is ripped away from him. He endures unimaginable suffering, along with lots of other people. He's not the only person who experienced that. But that's the first half of the book. In the second half of the book, he talks about his medical practice, his psychiatry, and how he helps patients deal with loss from his experiences. That's what the book's about. And it's important because I had a student read it one time, and they had an issue with it because they thought that Frankl was suggesting that it's this master plan that you have to suffer or your life has no meaning. And that's not what he's saying at all. What Frankl is saying is that through no fault of his own, he experienced unimaginable suffering. But once he survived that chapter in his life, what he did with that was a personal choice. And it wasn't an easy one. And so I'm not comparing this to Frankl's experience, but it's a good time for you to read that book if you're emotionally struggling with the transition of your life. There's a lot of things building up. You've got a very difficult academic load. Your family might be going through transition. You're trying to learn how to become an adult and juggle more responsibilities. Pretty soon you're going to be dealing with the emotional reality that your life is about to go through a major change, and you're probably about to move out of your house, and you're about to go off to college, and that stresses people out. So it's a good time in your life to evaluate what the purpose of all of this is going to be. Take control. So if there ever was a time for you to pick up that book, and I know you don't have a lot of free time, now would be a good time for you to read a book similar to that one, if not that actual book, Man's Search for Meaning. And the reason why I say that is this. Here's some things that you can do to take away from this. It's a good time for you to take control of the things that you can control in life. You know, just small examples of things like I was sitting in my living room and I was watching this like 70-foot tall sycamore tree that I have in my front yard. And it was waving back and forth. And I'm like, if that thing falls, it's going to be problems. But there's nothing I could do about it. I was tired of stressing about it. So I started thinking about the things that I could control. And I started planning, how do we move forward from this? And I started thinking about class, and I started thinking about you all and what was happening if you're experiencing the same thing. Stressed out and scared, what's going to happen to your house? Are you going to get flooded? And then I started thinking about how are we going to change? How are we going to move the due dates? And it was just little things, and it wasn't that those were important. The due dates for our tests were not more important than what was going on outside the window, but it was something that I could control. I wasn't ignoring the fact that a storm was happening, but I was trying to focus on what I could control, to be organized. And so there's a couple pieces of advice that I'm going to give you, because you may not be incredibly stressed out today on Monday, the first day back, but by the end of the week this week, or by the end of the week next week, it's all going to start piling up again, right? All of your schooling in your 3 or 4 or 5 AP classes that now lost a week of instruction. You're about to get a heavy course load. You're also about to have to start juggling yard work of cutting up limbs and dragging them off, or helping your parents deal with things around the house on top of the schooling and your work and your in-season and your fall sports. All of that stuff is going to start building up. It's just going to add stress. It's not going to take stress away. You're just going to add stress. So a couple things that you can do. And one is this. You can help your parents as much as possible. And I don't just mean around the house. I mean, take on some of the emotional responsibility. If you have younger siblings, they're going to be struggling with this stuff. You can help. You can help by not adding to the stress level of the house. Be more patient and understanding with your parents. They may be dealing with financial things. They may be dealing with the house itself. They may be dealing with what this means going forward. They may be canceling plans. They may be juggling with insurance adjusters. They may be arguing with contractors who are not showing up to the house, because if you've ever had to deal with a contractor, they don't show up to the house when they're supposed to, and they're busy. So you can help by not adding to that noise. You can help as much as you can around the house. But the other thing that you can do for your own personal well-being is eliminate as much stress in your own life as possible. And one way you can do that, one thing that you're in control of, is get organized. Try to establish as many routines as you can. And there's going to be plenty to do. Don't stress and lose sleep over the things that are hanging over your head. You have to compartmentalize and prioritize your time and work on what needs to be done today and leave what needs to be done tomorrow for tomorrow. Because you're not going to get it all done. And if you try, you're just going to lose sleep. And if you lose sleep, you're just going to be more emotional, and it's not going to help your stress level. So it doesn't mean ignoring responsibilities. It means prioritizing responsibilities. Right? You need to study for your tests. You need to apply to get into colleges. You need to go to work on Thursday. So start planning your weeks. Start establishing routines. Start going to bed on time. Wake up a little earlier and get some things done in the morning before school. Leave for school on time. Take into account the traffic. That's one way that you can really start your day off on a really stressful note, is be late. That's going to throw off the vibe of your whole day, especially if you were trying to accomplish something once you got on campus and now you're not even going to get to campus on time. So you have enough stress in your life to not add to that noise. The second thing is this: be very cognizant of your emotional state. Don't ever apologize for your emotional state. Don't apologize for your feelings, because you can't control those. And if you're in a situation where you need to decompress, then you need to be aware of that. If the stress starts to get overwhelming and you feel like you're going to have a breakdown or a panic attack, be cognizant of that. Go talk to somebody. Talk to a teacher, talk to a guidance counselor. Don't talk to your peers, because they're idiots, okay? If you're dealing with something emotionally, when I was a teenager, for whatever dumb teenage boy reasons, even if I thought my parents were going to understand, I didn't want to talk to them about certain things. I just wasn't going to. So instead, I went and talked to my ratchet moron friends, and they gave me horrible advice. And I was like, oh, thanks, man. Bad advice. So now's a great time in this transition to adulthood for you to learn the value of mentors. I'm about to turn 37 years old. I still have a mentor. There are people that you just have to allow to help you, because you're just not a finished product. It's just always self-improvement. It's always getting better. If your emotional load is too much, don't take it on by yourself. If your academic load is too much, then you need help with that. You need to prioritize, compartmentalize, talk to your teachers. If you have too much to deal with at home and you don't want to make excuses, but you can't get back to your dad's house, which is where your only textbook is, or whatever unique specific scenario is true for your life, don't hold that yourself. Communicate with your teachers, communicate with your bosses, communicate with your coaches. Communicate. Be upfront about those things. It doesn't have to be in a big group setting, but you need to let people in on those things so they can help you. Be willing to help other people. Also, and I'll wrap up with this, keep in mind that sometimes you experience something that's not really going to benefit you. Sometimes you experience tragedy, and the only positive thing that's ever going to come from it is that you might be the only person that can help someone else who's dealing with this later. And you may not be in an emotional state. Let's say you lost a family member. That takes a lot of emotional healing. And there's not any immediate help for that. But someday, like Viktor Frankl, you might find yourself in a situation where you're the only one with that unique experience, and you can use that experience to help other people who just don't know how to deal with it. Even little things like hurricanes. You might be in college at a university that's in a hurricane zone with people who are from somewhere else and they've never experienced a hurricane before and they don't even know how to deal with it. So your experiences now just gain perspective for the future. They give you an appreciation for the things that you took for granted. I know you probably weren't excited to go to school, but you should be, because this is some normalcy for you. And it means that you're not going to go to school till July 4th. After Hurricane Ivan hit, there was a high school campus in Pensacola that 2 student bodies had to share because one of the schools was destroyed. and I think it was like Escambia and Pine Forest, I don't remember. So one student body did a half day in the morning till lunchtime and left, and then the other student body came onto campus at lunchtime and went until the late afternoon. 2 student bodies sharing the same high school campus. Talk about ruining your senior year. Things could always be worse. And that's not to downplay your emotions. Again, I know that this is stressful and it's overwhelming. And I want you to deal with your emotions. So you need to learn how to reach out, self-advocate. If you want to talk to a teacher, talk to a teacher. If you want to talk to a peer counselor, talk to a peer counselor. If you want to talk to the psychologist, talk to the psychologist. Come and talk to me if you want. Just sit and melt. Emotionally fall apart. And I'll listen to you and blink a bunch of times. I'll give you an emotional hug. I won't give you a real hug for obvious reasons, but I want you to learn that you don't have to take on everything by yourself. And you never have to apologize for your emotions or trivialize them. You just need to learn how to deal with things and then move forward. The last thing I'll say to you is this. One of the things that I've learned from COVID and being out in the spring and now with this hurricane is that this being here and teaching is a privilege for me. It has given me a newfound appreciation for my job. And the realization that I came to was this, that when you're doing what you feel like you're built to do, there's no lack of motivation for that. And so if you can take a lesson from that, I don't know what it is, but maybe it's maybe the direction of your life needs to be towards purpose and not towards, finances or whatever the case may be. Maybe you need to make sure that you're finding something that you feel like you're built to do. And then you're never going to lack for motivation to try to do that. So again, stay organized, be as helpful as you can, don't bottle in your emotions, and I promise, before you know it, things are going to go back to normal. I promise that, okay? So